Welcome back, everyone, to the
All
Combat
right.
Carnivore. And if it's your first time, welcome to the Combat Carnivore. Make sure you like and subscribe. Today, I got a special guest, Lauren, which is an Iron Butterfly, which you've seen in the past podcast. This is her dad slash manager, so known on Instagram as Dadinger, right? Is how he got his name, right? Eric Garcia.
Yes,
So please give us a little bit
that's
of an
correct.
introduction of who you are and what you're all about.
Well, like you said, I'm Lauren's dad slash manager and also one of her coaches. I primarily, as far on the coaching side, what I do for her is I manage her strength and conditioning training as well as her diet, and then I do a lot of the communication for her with regard to the promoters, fight groups, and her other coaches, whether it be her jiu-jitsu coach, MMA coach, Muay Thai, so on and so forth. So that's kind of where I fit into her, um, her little her box.
Yeah, and so just to specify that Iron Butterfly, right, Lauren? She is a peak MMA fighter and she an athlete, jujitsu. She's a black belt, right? I can't remember what belt she is. Yeah,
Yeah, she got
black
her
belt.
black belt just about a year ago. She's been doing jujitsu, I believe. I know I'll probably get this wrong, but I think it took her 11 years to get
Heck yeah,
her black belt. But that's right in the norm. I mean, usually it's like 10 years or so. She
yeah,
in between all that though, she did, which I'm sure she let you know, she brought my one and only granddaughter into the world. So she had a little bit of a break there. So it wasn't too bad. She was able to continue back on that path, and now has her
yeah.
black belt.
It's cool to become a mother and then continue with something like that. I think that's a powerful flex on the rest of the world. And in addition to that, I believe she's a black belt in Taekwondo and she's got some Muay Thai training. And so she's an overall martial artist, been doing martial arts since she was a kid, right? And now bringing
Right.
that to a professional career.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she definitely started out with the taekwondo. It's kind of, I would say, it even started out as a family type thing when her, and she's also got twin sisters that are just about a little bit about 14 months younger than her. But the whole family kind of got into taekwondo when we lived up in Northern California, and so she and her sister and myself actually all got our black belt together, and then we ended up moving down south, down to San Diego, and she wanted to continue on with the taekwondo, but there we couldn't find I guess a dojo that had, I guess, a similar format. So she's like, well, let's try something different, and so we found jujitsu, and I thought the first time I saw her start grappling, I thought when she made physical contact with somebody to that extent, it was either going to be a yes or a no. And she just kind of took off with it. She didn't shy away from it. She really liked the aggressiveness of it and just fell in love with it from there.
Perfect. I love that. And so this is actually a great transition because I loved talking to Lauren, but I would want to talk more about you. So how did you then get involved with jujitsu? Was it through her and did you stay with her through the fighting and you just kind of stuck with it for her case? And then if regardless of whether that answer is, how has that influenced you and what you do and your involvement in like studying nutrition and studying weight training programs, so on and so forth? Or was like that your expertise and then that just kind of naturally gravitated to support her fight career?
Oh, okay. No, that's it's so we got into jujitsu together. I mean, when she enrolled, when she said she wanted to do it, we kind of both took the intro, week class, and so we both
Mm,
enrolled into it. Um, in addition to her, so she at that time, she was, gosh, I think she was 13 or 14, and so she had jujitsu in her evenings, and she had school. She was in high
mm.
school, and and she was also homeschooled. She's actually quite academically accomplished. I mean, all three of my kids they're all homeschooled, and so that really kind of gave her the flexibility to really kind of dive into the whole jujitsu thing, because she could go to early classes and stay to late classes. She could go bounce around because she was in charge of her school schedule as well. Um, well, then like I said, I stuck with it with her for about 6 months. On my little side hobby was I did mountain biking, and it was through work and everything, and I had a really bad accident, and so it just crushed my shoulder, and so I had to take a step back from that, and I just don't have the range of motion to stick with jujitsu anymore. And so, but she just kept, she wanted to continue on with it. So she did. And as things kind of progressed, it was a pretty steady progression. She came to me one day, I think she was um, about 16 and a half or so. And she said, "Hey, Dad, what do you think? The coach, the MMA coach, thinks I, might enjoy, doing the MMA side of things." And so I was like, "Well, we got to talk to your mom." So
Yeah.
we talked to mom, and I was like, I said, "Well, she's diligent. She's going to be the only girl. They're going to take care of her." And so we let her go ahead and do that. She's about 6 months into that training, and then she's already talking about, "Well, I might want to compete." And I said, "You can compete when you can sign the contract legally yourself. I'm not going to sign a contract for you. When you turn 18, you go right ahead and you can compete." And so that kind of, but at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, her mom is definitely going to have something to
Yeah.
say about
Yeah.
that one. And so, and of course, she did. There was definitely some reluctance there, but we've always been supportive of what the girls want to do. And so I said, "Well, she's 18. She's going to be able to go do it whether we like it or not. It's better, we might as well just be supportive." And we both agreed on that. So she had her had her first fight, and just kind of like, you just tell, she just kind of fell in love with it. She loved the crowd. She loved just the whole action of the whole thing, and on top of it, she won. So she was
Hmm.
she was hooked. So there's no
Right.
better thing there. Um, once she and when we saw that and the whole transition there, and when she expressed, that, yeah, I really want to kind of pursue this, kind of see what I can do with it. I really think I can do well, and if I just keep diligently working. And that's probably when I got more and more involved. I thought, okay, you hear so many horror stories, from as a parent, of all these things, kids getting involved in someone, taking advantage of them and running them down, they think they're going down the right way. I thought, well, I'm going to safeguard this. I'm not going to put the brakes on things, but I'll make sure she doesn't get taken advantage of. And so that was the first phase, and that pretty well worked. I got to know everybody in the local fight game. I got more involved with the coaches that she was working with, and from there, I did help her on that first fight because she had to make weight. And so that was a big learning curve, because it is definitely a challenge for Lauren, not just on nutrition and everything, but making weight for her. She has type 1 diabetes.
Right.
And so keeping an eye on, so she can't do like a regular athlete and just go and crash everything and just let your body just drop off the weight. She has to watch her sugars and make sure everything else is maintained. So there was definitely a learning curve. And so as she got older, and she got better and got stronger, there's still a learning curve. Now you're trying to manage things through the off season or while she's in camp. And then of course she's got that last cut week. And so, being that we grew up with her, being a diabetic, it made more sense to that she actually has somebody who knows her, knows how certain foods affect her, how just going to the gym affects her, how just all these different things. We'd already seen how things happen with her, highs and lows. So rather than go to an outside source, I just dove into it. And so, and for myself, I already had, like, I had my own personal background as far as what I needed and what it took for me to put on muscle or lean out or whatever I was doing, based on what when I got into it back when I got into training myself back in the late 80s and the 90s. And so I was able to kind of transition that, but it was still, a learning curve. At least, having the basis, we had tried talking to outside dietitians, and there was so much of a learning curve, because trying to find one that, you might have a good dietitian. You have a dietitian who has ever dealt with somebody that has type 1 diabetes.
Right.
Pretty tough, and is an athlete. you
Mm.
know so
Yeah.
you could find one that, yeah, they go to the gym and they're a type 1 diabetic. Are you going to find one that goes to the gym, trains early in the morning, trains in the afternoon, trains at night, fights, has to cut weight? That's a pretty tall order. So
Yeah. It's a lot of
we
requirements.
yeah, so it's, for in the, for the, let's see, we've been doing this for a few years now. We finally, I would say the the last 2 years have been a lot easier. There's a whole lot of trial and error, but we document every little thing that she does, as far as what works, what doesn't work. Um, you know, right down to any little, female thing that might pop up that you got to kind of
Right.
take into consideration. And so we've got things pretty well dialed in now. And so like we're really excited about her upcoming match in September, because we've got her, she's right where we ideally would always want her to be before she starts her weight cut. So we're actually looking forward to this last week with her. It really should be, what we're thinking is probably going to be a pretty, not, I won't say easy, but easier weight cut by comparison as a result.
I talked to her quite a bit about that actually because I was advocating to her doing carnivore style weight cut because
Mhm.
it's a fasting mimicking type diet. And I think like for me, carnivore, what's done for me and a lot of people I know, it's gotten people off diabetes, insulin
Mhm.
medication and stuff. So uh I know that you're pretty big into the carnivore. And so
Yep.
I want to start getting into that now that we kind of have our basis established. One, what is your full-time job now?
My full-time job, I work for a hydraulic company. And so
Okay.
we, basically, and I manage the Southwest Territory. I'm a territory manager for it's a company based out of Tennessee. And basically I guess, supply components and also design hydraulic systems for like heavy industry type, customers. Not so much like an end user thing. I'm dealing with the actual manufacturer of the equipment.
Okay. And so you're into hydraulics, and then before that you were an Army Ranger, correct?
That's great. Yeah, I mean that definitely takes things back, quite a ways. I was in the Army from 1986 to 1990, and so I literally got out. I was driving home when the Gulf War One started up, and I thought first I literally, it was like, I think it was August 6th. I'm literally driving home from Georgia, and I'm listening to the radio thinking I'm gonna get home. They're gonna call me back up. So, no, unfortunately, they never did, and I was able to, go right into school. They didn't even call it my old unit or anything like that, so it wasn't. I was, I guess, worrying for nothing, but it was just kind of funny coincidence. Literally, I barely ETS'd, and here I am driving on the road thinking, oh my god, I'm gonna have to turn back around. This is crazy.
Yeah. So, but still, a veteran. And one
Yes.
of I don't know if you can see my shirt, but we're all about make veterans great again. It's a
Mhm,
movement that we
absolutely.
started. We believe that the current intervention methods of the VA and whatever systems and the powers that be is completely atrocious. The
Oh,
suicide rate
yes.
is 22 veterans a day, which is unacceptable. The suicide rate in the United States is 135 people a day, and 1.6 million people a year attempt suicide. And 68.5, I can't remember, 68% above that are white males who could
Hmm.
attempt suicide. So, or commit suicide rather. So, like, I'm a big believer in making men strong, right? And I believe
100,
that
100%.
yeah. And I believe that veterans are the ones who are our strongest men in society, oftentimes, and they're the
Mhm.
ones who are being the most broken. And so I have created a system to help veterans, which I want to talk to you about a little bit later. And I just want to establish that you're in the combat community for combat sports. You are a veteran and you're a dad, obviously, of a girl who is in combat sports. And of course, I have four kids. So I have, my kids are in jujitsu and my wife is in jujitsu and has some Muay Thai fights. And so like we're big in, combat sports and helping combat veterans. So I became the combat carnivore. And I
Mhm.
tell everyone we can save the world, but especially vets with steak strangles and stoicism. So
Love it. Love it.
yeah, so that's my movement. And I believe it is the strongest intervention method on the planet for people who are dealing with PTSD, chronic mental illness, chronic physical illness, and so on and so forth, right? But especially amongst veterans and men. So that's who I am, right? And you fit perfectly into that category, Eric Garcia. And so I would love to, one, establish a little bit more about kind of what we're about to talk about next, but then get more into that what you think about veterans and men, the current ideological narratives that are kind of pushing towards men to be a certain way right now, while at the same time trying to be a strong dad and father for your girls, which I think is one of the most important things. and how not only is the environment causing that, but our diet causing that. And
Mhm.
since you are obviously in the combat world, like we discussed, you're now having to take an additional look into the whole thing from a nutritional standpoint because your daughter, who is a combative athlete, has nutritional and dietary needs. And what's very interesting is to call yourself a dietitian or a nutritionalist, you have to meet certain requirements that I believe fill a checkbox, like a list of check boxes that are all corrupt because
Yep.
who dictates the nutritional field are either, or dietitian field, are either Seventh Day Adventists, like a cult based organization who's religiously anti meat, or you have to go based off the studies where, like, Coca Cola puts 11 times more funding into studies or produces 11 times more studies, one of the two, than government funded
Mhm.
nutritional studies. So it's kind of like you're either choosing like the standard American diet, which is like calories in, calories out, kind of blame your own genetics for the reason why you're going through chronic illness. Or if you go the healthy route, then you're kind of surrounded and monopolized by Seventh day Adventists who are religiously anti meat. So that's kind of where we stand. And I believe those things are causing men to be literally, it's designed to be chemically castrating for the religious folk, right? Or it's just chronically inflammatory, and that's the environment we live in. And I feel like you've been exposed to that quite a bit, being the position that you're in.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, it's around, it's constantly around us. I mean, it's I know for myself, if I, think back to when, I guess I became an adult, an actual adult, and the
Yeah.
way we actually did things, and what the way that the military, like I think I was pretty fortunate. I mean, I would not want to be, and I hopefully no one takes this the wrong way. I wouldn't want to be in the military right now.
Dude,
That's
tell
that
me
would not.
about it.
Uh,
I,
so and and there was some middle, there's definitely some middle ground, but I really appreciate a lot of the things that, the time that I spent in the military with the unit I was in, being in a ranger unit. I tell people this too. They all think that I'm, pulling their leg, but even back then, from 86 to 90, one of the big things that they ensured was diet. I mean, there was a lot of times that we were deficient, just, whether it was a training situation or just the way that, things, lined up. We didn't always get, 3 meals. But when we were at our downtime, or we were in a garrison type situation, the breakfast that was afforded to me, super high protein availability, wasn't forced on you. If you wanted to go eat donuts, you could go eat donuts. But if I wanted to wake up every morning and have a steak with some eggs and, something else along with it, it was there for me. And same thing with lunch, and same thing with a dinner. And so that kind of set my tone, so because when things started changing, I was able to kind of recall back, like, well, how did I feel when I was eating this way, versus
mm-hmm.
the way someone else, when you're trying to follow some newfangled, diet routine, and they're like, oh, you should eat, I think my favorite one I've seen recently was somebody trying to say how lentils had more has more protein per, pound or cup or whatever than an egg. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, you're not going to tell me that this plant is better for me than this egg.
Right.
I mean, it's just nonsense. But I see why people buy into it, because if you don't actually try and, seriously gauge yourself and listen to what your body's telling you, it's an easy sell, but if you
Yeah.
actually, give your body some time, see, why, you know, why we have evolved the way we have evolved, and, on the evolutionary scale, we're not even, we're a blip on the radar.
Right.
So things
Modern
haven't,
humans. Yeah.
yeah, modern, we have not changed the whole. It's going to take, a few more millennia before, things change, so none of us currently sitting here are going to change a stinking thing, but so yeah, and it took me a while, I mean, I'm like a lot of people. I've always done that, but I've always fallen into every other trap out there. Friday will hit and we'll go out and drink. I would go out and have some beer, have some pizza, whatever, feel like total hell the next day,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But now that I'm older and wiser, I was, start getting, you go see the doctor a few times and they tell you, oh, you got high blood pressure, you got this, they
Yeah.
got that. Problem with that is they've also got, well, here's a pill for this, here's a pill for that,
Mm-hmm.
here's this. And what I've always picked on, even at the, I mean, I'm 57 now, and these guys, and so most of my friends or my peers they're already taking something. They've already got some prescription that they're currently taking, that they'll be taking until they decide either that's not working for them or the doctor gives them something else to, offset this. And so I just had always strived to, like, I don't want to take anything. That's always been my attitude, because
Right.
every commercial you see, here's what it does, but here's all the side effects, and so it's like, and then in my and during all, I guess firsthand, I got to watch my own father, kind of get stuck on that. He had diabetes, so he got type 2 diabetes. I had medication for that. Then he had medication for blood thinners, but then they'd have another one for this, another one for that, and he would just had a stack of medications to offset this side effect and that side effect. And, it just was this endless thing. And so back to myself, I went to the doctor, and they said, yeah, you got high blood pressure. Here, we'll prescribe you this. It's like, okay, well, I also had sleep apnea. So it's like, all right, well, let's take care of that. Well, I found just taking care of the snoring part of things lowered my blood pressure
Hmm.
on its own. Not down to ideal, but it did lower it. And so then all of a sudden, I ran into Carnivore several years ago, and was always playing with it. Whereas now I'm actually very serious about it, where I will stick pretty strict carnivore. I'll have my little cheat days here and there where, you know, birthday comes along. Yeah, I'm gonna have a piece of cake. You know, that's just, I'm human. I'm gonna have a piece of cake, especially if it's a homemade piece of cake. I'm gonna have a piece of cake.
I must not be
Um,
human. I don't cheat ever.
I mean, I try. I really do. I think for me, the toughest thing, if I'm in town, because my job does take me out of town,
Yeah.
anywhere from a week to maybe 2 weeks out of the month. And if I'm in town, it's pretty easy to stay on my diet. I have my stuff's in the freezer. I make what I want to eat, and not have to really worry about it. Get on the road, and it does get challenging depending on where you are. So I've had to learn how to, like, either if I go to, like, In-N-Out's my favorite fast food place to hit, because they will make it the way I want it so that I can still stay on my diet.
Right.
It's like, no bun, no lettuce, just cheese, meat, and call
Yeah.
it a day.
I do Burger
You know,
King. Burger
yeah.
King
So
because it's over an open flame, so I don't have to worry about the seed oils. You know what I
right,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then in the evenings, it's in the evenings, it's not so bad. I usually find a restaurant that I can get a steak, or
Yeah.
something like that. And so I'm usually pretty good. But the traveling is definitely the most challenging, because I got a lot of windshield time driving around. It's like you always want something to, pass the time, and there's nothing carnivore except for grabbing a bag of jerky, maybe. It's
Yeah.
about the thing
Exactly.
I can really do. Um, but that has really helped me, because in addition to, I guess, switching over to carnivore really helped me, because it completed getting my blood pressure into a good range. And
Stop snoring. No more sleep
yeah,
apnea.
it
Yeah.
it it definitely reduced it. I mean, it's I could tell once I was it's one of those things, once, yeah, I mean, I'd always known I snored, but I didn't realize there was a problem with it until you get older. Then they
Yeah.
go, oh, you have sleep apnea. And
A
so,
week,
but
a week into carnivore for me, my snoring, I had
it's
bad
just
snoring. Gone. I haven't
just gone.
snored since a week after going carnivore. So carry on. So yeah.
Oh yeah. So I know mine's reduced, because I remember the way I felt beforehand, because it was like, I haven't recorded myself, but I could tell, like, oh yeah, my mouth, I'm not waking up with a dry mouth. I'm not, I was staying in the same position, all night now, instead of, tossing and turning, and,
Hmm.
constantly waking up with, being woken up by snoring and whatnot. And but the other thing is I also had, not, and I don't have it bad as a lot of people, but I have a mild case of psoriasis. Well, that's clear. The carnivore is clearing that up.
Hmm.
So, and I'm watching it just steadily, clear up. And it's versus, again, I remember seeing the doctor my last checkup, going, oh, hey, I see you got a little psoriasis. I can give you something for that. Nope,
Yep.
I'm good.
Yep.
I'm taking care of it with diet. I'm good. So,
They're like cowboys, like quick draws. Like I got medication,
oh,
I got prescription.
big time,
It's
big
just
time.
so quick to give you a medicine and make you dependent. It's crazy.
Oh, it is. I mean, and even to give my doctor some props, I mean, she's better than some. She hasn't. I think she kind of, either she knows my stance on. We haven't really talked about it, but I've kind of just said no, no, no every time she's offered something. And she was really good. A few years back, I had to have my gallbladder removed, and I was, think when that got taken out, first question I'm out to the surgeon when he's checking on me, I'm like, all right, how does this affect my diet?
Yeah.
What do you guys, what do I got to do? And he's like, well, except for a couple of days of clear liquids, you can have a steak or a hamburger, whatever you want, in a couple of days. And I was like, wow, that was
Yeah.
so encouraging. So,
The liver, the
yeah,
liver kind of makes like a pseudo gallbladder if
right,
you have your gallbladder removed. It's still not ideal, but you know what's very interesting is my gallbladder was completely effed. And gallstones like mess like I remember I had pancreatitis at one point. And anyway, I've completely cured it
oh wow, okay,
according to my knowledge. And yeah, I can eat as much fat, protein, whatever. I no longer even get like I used to get spasms all the time. It's gone. I definitely passed a few stones, and which is why I mentioned the pancreatitis, right? I definitely
right.
had bile going out in all sorts of directions. It was horrible. But my gallbladder is back to normal, and I don't think a lot of people realize you can heal your gallbladder by just going back on the proper human diet because well, how gallstones build up is it like concretes there like it doesn't get used because you're on a low fat diet, and so the bile that sits in there slowly hearts like sludges and then hardens and then creates stones. However, if you're constantly eating fat again, you're going to have new bile all the time, and actually the new bile helps disintegrate the stones of the old
Oh,
bile.
okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
and so it was very interesting, and then it's impossible to build up gallstones when you are having a high fat and protein diet demand because it's constantly having to make new bile. And what's very interesting is the fat that you then consume that your bile does not emulsify with just goes out the back door basically. So it's like you
Right.
cannot over consume fat, especially, and everyone's going to get into the weeds on this one, but if you're on a pure carnivore diet, you cannot over consume fat because your bile will emulsify all the amount that it can for digestion and the rest goes out the back door, right? And so that being said, your gallbladder is always being recycled, new bile, and you can't develop stones. It's like nearly
Hmm.
impossible. So anyway, if you have a bad gallbladder or if you have your gallbladder removed, know that being on carnivore, you can still do it. You can still take
Mhm.
on high fats. Just as Eric here is an example that he still does carnivore with no gallbladder.
Yeah. No, and it's funny the fat thing because I remember when I first started and like I said I think I do it. I'm much more diligent. Like I said, I'll have a piece of cake here. So let's see what there's 3 or 4 birthdays a year, so I'll end up messing up. But the thing that was shocking to me was it's like making that switch is like getting that getting yourself mentally prepared that fat's okay. And so 'cause-
the
and
right
it was
the right types of fats, right?
the right, yeah,
The right
exactly, the right
types.
types of fats, because on the meat side, I was always really good with that. I mean, I grew up, eating, eating bacon and all, all kinds of fatty meats, and my favorite cut of steak now is a ribeye. It's
Yo,
one of the fattier ones out there. It's like I love that thing, and it was all I really needed. And it took the same doctor that I mentioned earlier. He didn't go carnivore, but he got me on the track to even start looking that direction. 'Cause he's like, what would be really good for you is to go on a keto diet. He goes, it would probably
yeah,
serve you quite well. And so I did start off that way, and I did feel genuinely much better. I just actually felt better. And the other thing that he kind of enlightened me with is he said, hey, were you taking a lot of, in addition to your diet, were you just supplementing fiber? And I said, you're absolutely. I said, I took Metamucil at night religiously.
God, fiber,
And
God,
oh yeah. And so he goes, well, you got to kind of look at it like this. He goes, the reason fiber is so bad, he goes, this isn't a shared opinion. He goes, but the reason that all this excess fiber is so called needed is because of the crap diet that
exactly,
we've got. You need that to clean the crap out. He goes, so if you're not taking in the crap, you don't need the fiber. I was like, oh,
exactly.
well, that's great. So I eliminated that, went on, switched over to a keto diet, and it took me about a week, and then within a week, I was pretty much on a keto diet, and I just couldn't believe how well I felt. My energy levels were good. Um, Digestively, everything just felt good. I wasn't feeling the bloat that I used to feel. You in the evening, I'd never forget. I'd go to the gym, come home, eat, and I just sit there. I felt like like a beach whale on the couch. And
Yeah.
now I can sit there and just, I can, eat pound and a half or 2 pounds of steak or whatever. And it doesn't sit on you the same way. It's
No.
just kind of, I mean, you're full, you're satiated, but you're not busted at the seams, you're not
Yeah.
constantly feeling your gut fill up with, with gas or anything like that. You're just, I'm
Yeah.
comfortable and you're good to go.
Try try to overeat on a protein fat diet. Try.
Yeah.
Just try. I ask you to try. You
It is
can't do it.
super, no, it is next to impossible.
So
Next to
that's a
impossible.
very interesting thing is like insul when you take in androgynous carbs, right? What ends up
Hmm.
happening is that actually blocks your ability to access fat stores. And so there's a thing called leptin, right? And leptin, what it does is it accesses your brain to say, hey, we're full. But when you
Hmm.
have carbs, it blocks that. It blocks the hormones that let you know that your stomach is stretching. It's very interesting. And so what ends up happening is when you eat these carbs, uh, your body, there's different theories on this, but they all kind of say the same thing. The protein leverage hypothesis is you will eat until you get an adequate amount of protein because protein is so important for you.
Right.
In our new diets, there's very little protein. And you know what's very interesting is protein is very difficult and very expensive to
Hmm.
produce. So
Yeah.
everything becomes carbs and everything becomes fat and carbs. And so that is one of the most addictive things that you can have. And you will continuously eat and eat and eat and eat until you get enough
100%.
protein from that diet. And so what happens is your brain now doesn't even realize, right, that your stomach is being filled. So you continuously eat. And then when it's like, okay, I can't eat anymore, what ends up happening after that is your blood sugar spikes, insulin goes up, causing your blood sugar to now drop and drop below baseline. And when you drop below baseline, your brain doesn't have enough energy, so it freaks the hell out and says, "I'm dying." And then when it releases ghrelin, and so that you become viciously hungry again. And like it's this
That's true.
nonstop cycle. And what's very interesting is those foods have a longer shelf life because so what they do is they dehydrate it. And humans used to get a ton of their hydration through food,
Hmm.
right? And so
Yep.
it's interesting here is because as you eat, you become more dehydrated, telling you that you're more hungry on top of all of that. And then on top of that, your body also has telltale signs that you're full based on how much your jaw worked. And so now foods are very
Right.
easily consumable.
Oh
And
yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
so it's like my jaw hasn't worked enough. So obviously, I haven't gotten enough nutrients, right? And this goes on and on and on of being addictive, of being over consuming. And so that's what you're talking about. When you eat protein, high quality with the fats that are supposed to go with it, right? You become satiated very quickly. You can't overeat on it. You feel light on it.
Yeah.
Your body is able to absorb. And then your hunger hormones, your blood sugar doesn't spike and then go below, releasing ghrelin. So you're not hungry as often. And so you go into fasting and feasting. And when you eat, digestion is one of the major taxations on the body, major energy depletions, right? And so when you're constantly eating and they tell you don't spike your insulin because I'll drop so much, so you want to eat little meals throughout the day, what ends up happening is you're constantly having
Yeah.
elevated glucose and then you're constantly causing stress in your digestive system. You know what I mean? And you do not even release BDNF, brain derived nootropic factor, until you're 12 hours after eating. And this also affects your circadian rhythm, and to say that you won't sleep as well, you won't digest as well. You know what I mean? It affects every process in your
Oh, it's
body.
a vicious
Elevated
cycle.
insulin, right? Elevated insulin affects over 100 processes toxically in the body. So everything goes at like when you raise your blood sugar levels, everything goes up. That insulin goes up. Everything is affected. That inflammation is affected. Every part of your body, your brain, your kidneys, all parts of your body are affected at that level. So I don't even think people realize how damaging these cycles are, not to even consider the fact that processed foods not only include sugars but processed seed oil, so on and so forth. So it's this horrible trend that people get stuck on. It's atrocious, it's egregious. And then of course, like you said, then they're in bed with the insurance companies and the medical industry, the drug companies. So that
Hmm.
way it's like, here's a drug for this, here's a drug for that. And guess who the number one, by far the number one uh contributor to donors, like the number one donors and the number one lobbyists. Guess who is the number one industry? The
Oh,
drug companies.
it's got to be pharma. Yeah, I was gonna say
It's
pharma's
pharma.
driving the bus on that one.
Yeah, pharma, and followed pretty closely by insurance companies,
Hmm.
followed pretty closely by the food industry, and what was the other one? But regardless, food, it's all the cycle, right? And I believe, oh, what was the number? It's like 1,800 employees are lobbyists in the government.
Jeez,
Isn't that insane?
that is
Like
insane.
1,800 humans are being employed to influence laws for drug companies.
Right. I mean,
That's
that's
bigger
just
than most companies itself.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're talking
Just
about billions of dollars, billions, like a higher GDP than a lot of countries, influencing America's laws for drug companies.
yep, absolutely.
So that's the world we live in. And then we sound crazy, which is, I'm surprised how you found a doctor that was like pro keto.
It shocked me. Like I said, I didn't it was one of those things, where he was saying all these things. I'm like, and I was just like, I was in, when my gallbladder got taken out, I was like literally I was taken out of my house. The ambulance came to take me out of the house. I couldn't get up off the couch. It was so debilitating. So I was
Yeah.
so thankful. But it was when he was talking, you're right though. It's like I was so thankful in hindsight, that this guy, the way that he was, talking to me, and just how honest he was without really kind of, putting it as bluntly as you and I are talking about it. He was just, well, here's what I would recommend, just laying it out there.
And he
And
was from California.
yeah, California. Oh yeah.
Dude,
He's from
that's the
Southern California.
rarest place. It's the rarest place to find somebody like that. Dude,
I mean,
did you know?
it might have had something to do with the fact that he wasn't he was probably, I would say, if I had to make a guess, he was probably in his middle to later 60s on
Wow.
this age scale. So it's like, so maybe he was speaking from a worldly, standpoint. He wasn't a 30 something, doctor that was
Yeah.
like right out of med school and, whatever. But
So
you're right though. I mean, being in California and getting that attitude is rare.
right. So you know what's very interesting is autism rate. So I think it's like right now 1 in 35 kids have autism, where like
I
a
think
hundred
it's high.
years ago
I think it's higher than that, to be honest.
in
I
California,
think it's I think it, yeah,
it's
it's
one in
bad.
22.
Yeah, it's bad. Oh, yeah,
And
okay,
the
that's probably the figure I'm thinking of. It's bad. It's real bad.
and
Go
they
ahead.
say there's a causational study right now showing that it's, I believe it was a carnitine relation. They didn't think it was a vital or an essential nutrient. Turns out it probably is. And for the people who have a genetic disposition for something like autism and other neurological dysfactors, how would you say that? Anyway, predispositions for a certain genetic or hereditary disease. If you don't have carnitine, the carnitine would normally suppress it, but it actually, a lack of carnitine expresses the gene, the gene in yeah, expresses the gene for things like autism. So it's because California is a lot more liberal, they're a lot more likely to be plant-based and follow that route. And
Yep.
then as a result, they are the leading, I believe, the leading state for autism, which is one in
Oh, yeah.
22 kids. That's
Yep.
terrifying.
Oh, it is. It is. I'm not sure if Lauren shared that with you, but one of her twin sisters has autism.
She did
Um,
not.
yeah. So, and even then, it was one of those, we've been chasing that one. Again, it's one of those situations where I'm very thankful. Her, you know, um, their mom was a stay at home mom, so she
Hmm.
was on top of it. And so, and we also, thankfully she was a twin. So we had a comparable sister to compare things to as far as, progression. I got one daughter who's talking a mile a minute, and I've got another one who's approaching the age of 3 and is still basically nonverbal. And so even then though, it was super hard to get a diagnosis because they're like, oh, she's too young to test. And
Mm,
we finally just, my wife, she just kept pushing the issue, finally got her tested and diagnosed, and we got her into some early intervention. And
good.
so she's doing, quite well. I mean,
Have you?
she's an adult. She's 26 now. She's a quite accomplished
Good.
kid or young lady, and very, um, it just has not held her back, but at the same time, I'm certain, just like you're talking about, that there's anything from environmental factors, diet, vaccines. There's so many things that these kids bombarded with that,
Yeah.
you know, it's they can't turn around and say, oh, it just happened. You
No.
know, that's not suitable.
You should check out the studies on kids with autism going into ketosis and what it does for them. Kids who were normally autistic and nonverbal uh, go becoming verbal, and then when they take them off the diet, going back to being nonverbal. It's a pretty intense
Wow.
because the brain becomes insulin resistant. And so the only thing that can cross the blood-brain barrier from there becomes ketones. And so your body's not getting the proper energy it needs in order for the mitochondria to do what it needs to do. And if you're just causing inflammation to it, you're just causing more distress on a stressed environment. So
Hmm,
yeah, definitely check out that. So I only have 10 minutes left. So I want to
sure.
ask you, um, which is kind of like the main thesis or the main theme of this. What is your suggestion as a veteran, as a man who is on Carnivore, who is a father of daughters? Because and I'll proceed this by saying that uh soy boys is as they call them, which is actually
Hmm.
very true. Soy has phytoestrogens in it. I suffered
Yeah.
actually when I tried to fix my health by going vegan. I had a lot of soy and I had a ton of problems with it. Um, but soy is in everything. It's one of the number one cash crops around, right?
Yep.
It's highly preserves, but pesticides, sprayed on, so on and so forth, right? On top of that, the fact that a low fat diet, all cholesterol are all hormones are preceded with cholesterol, and we're trying to lower everyone's cholesterol, which leads to testosterone. In addition, same thing with women. Women need to convert not extra, but their testosterone hormones into estrogen. And so by going on a low fat diet, what we actually end up doing is making men more feminine and we make women more masculine. And
Hmm.
that's the narrative that we see boss ass women and like weak little men, and uh kind of demonizing masculinity in men. What is your suggestion as the someone who is that exact epitome of an alpha dad taking care of daughters, who's carnivore, who's a vet? What would your message be to men, young men, and veterans out there who feel trapped? Uh, how could steak strangles and stoicism in your mind and with your experience help them?
I guess okay, so I guess from my perspective, and it's obviously it's yeah, even people in my own immediate circle would probably disagree on some points, but they're I the girls growing up, I think they always saw a very clear and defined contrast between mom and dad. Dad was not, it's not that dad didn't have a soft side. I got three girls. I'm going to have a soft side.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, my girls will be the first one to tell you that dad is dad. Dad is dad is would took charge of every stinking situation. If I think that if you sat them down and like, hey, what is the definition? What does your dad do? That's a definition of what a where a man stands. Each of them got their own individual story, whether it's something happened to them. And I think the thing that frustrates me the most is because I would go and take care I went and took care of the situation. Like one of my daughters, um she was in grade school. This is just one example, but this would be the tamest thing I've probably done. So, but so she was in grade school. She got spit on by a couple of boys.
Oh
Came
God.
home crying. Yeah, she came home crying. I jumped in my truck, went straight back down to the school, walked in. Hey, here's what happened. What are you guys going to do about it? And it's basically I walk into, I'm way outnumbered in this situation. I walk in, I am the only male in this office. There's the principal,
Of
vice
course.
principal, and a
Of
couple of
course.
admins. But at the same time, so they're looking, it's like, well, we'll look into it. I said, no, we're gonna figure this out now. I said, because my resolution, if you don't fix it right now before I leave, is I'm going to go home and I'm going to teach my daughter how to hurt little boys really, really bad. And she's going to come here tomorrow and probably hurt a couple little boys. And then you're going to call me back down, and all I'm going to do is say, did she win the fight? That's all. That's the only question going to come out of my mouth. And so, and each of my daughters has a situation like that. There's something. I mean, they'll have their own story, but it's. I guess that's where I look at dads now, or I look at men now, and we've taken this back seat, so to
Hmm.
speak, or a very passive way of dealing with things. It's like, no, it's not normal for us to always just talk things out. Sometimes we got to be a little bit of aggressive, and that's okay. You know, um, things get done. When things go bad, you don't want the guy that's over there. He's not the guy you want to be. That's going to be passive to go solve the situation.
Right.
When things go bad, you're going to call the guy, the man in your life. He's gonna have that little sign that says break glass in case of emergency. That's who you want.
Yeah.
And that's your attitude. You don't have to be like that all the time. You don't have to be walking around like like some monstrous, idiot all the time. But you should step up. We should not be afraid to embrace the fact that we are men and the women are women. We're here to protect women. That's one of our primary jobs. We have the muscle, we've got the testosterone. It is our job and our function to lead by example, protect our family, and protect ourselves. And in doing so does not mean being passive or acting like being masculine is a bad thing. And it's a whole it's a whole group of people saying that we're bad because we're males. I mean,
Right. I
that's the most
know.
absurd thing the
Yeah.
fact that even got
We
any
built
kind of
great
traction.
nations. We built great
Yeah,
nations, and they're like, look at the patriarchy, how bad
yeah,
it's done.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I forget the country, but I mean, there was I forgot where it was. I forget which country did it, but there was a country where all the women went on strike for a day.
Greenland or Iceland, I can't remember. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
but
one of
yeah,
those, and nothing stopped.
yeah.
There was no change. But by
It's a
contrast,
disillusion. It's a delusion. They have no idea that the world they're dependent on men.
yeah,
Almost every aspect. Yeah.
exactly. I mean, it's kind of like you know I wouldn't want to take away anybody's rights. That's not what I'm not saying. I'm not even going to allude to even go that direction. But I do find it funny when I hear you know that um, women can do anything that a man can do, and it's like certain things. you know, if it's a desk job, sure,
Yeah.
but how many women do we have out in the oil fields? How many women do we
Right.
have out in the oil
Exactly.
platforms? How many were on skyscrapers when we were building New York? You know, how many women were out building Hoover Dam? I mean, if you want equality, let's see the bricklayers come in there.
Exactly.
Where are they?
So
And so you can't, it's to recognize, and I guess even more the our current state of affairs. If things go down really, really bad and we get into another conflict as a nation against,
mhm.
against Russia or Iran, whoever it is, the front lines are not going to be filled with women. It's not even going to be 50-50. It's
Not
going to
even,
be,
yeah, soy
yeah,
boys.
and even when and ideally, even if you look at the past conflict, it's not that we sent women out into the front lines. Women were killed. That did
Yeah.
happen. We had things that happened. But what people don't realize is that you've got, like you started off earlier, is like just how beneficial the core individuals are that actually have taken the time to serve the country. Because
Right.
I don't think people realize how small that number is. You know, I believe, and I don't think it's changed very much, but my understanding is that 1% of the country
1%.
protects protects 100% of the country.
Hmm.
So that's a tiny number. And then when you look at that, only 10% of that number are the trigger pullers.
Right.
you know everything else is support. So you're talking about, and everybody's important. I'm not taking away from support guys. I couldn't have done
Right.
my job while I was there. But it's that clear understanding, that men, do not be afraid to embrace the fact that you are a man. Go eat, go eat some meat. Eat some, don't be
Choke
afraid to
someone.
have it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's one of those things. For myself, I think my kids would even testify to this, because we've been in situations where there's been, maybe some verbal stuff going on. I'm not a big back talker. I'm more, all right, if you're not going to shut up, I'm going to shut you up. I'm
Yeah.
also I'm also big enough that just that alone is a deterrent. I can turn around, and it's like I tell my kids, I was a real, bad mother when I was in the military. When I was, 18 to 22, I thought I was really bad. I
Yeah.
look at those pictures and I look at myself now. I would be far scarier of this individual versus that individual.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's where, guys just got to quit being afraid. I think,
Yeah.
real, for the other thing too is I think real women appreciate a real guy. I don't think a woman really wants to be married to a soy boy. I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think that's what they're really chasing. So I think, guys just need to embrace what they are. Um, we were, we were a much stronger and happier country, quite frankly, when that's how we were.
I agree.
I mean,
I, I
and
think,
it's not even about knowing your place. It's just a matter of like we were just genuinely happier. We were men appreciate women for being women, and women should most women do appreciate men for being men. It's this little sect that's
yeah.
driving us all nuts.
But those are the ones who are online. So I think that's a good
Yes,
place because I got to stop.
sure.
But thank you so much, Eric Garcia, Dadinger, for coming on the show. Remember, we can save the world with steak strangles and stoicism. If you or somebody that you know is struggling with mental health, especially a man, especially a veteran, please go to the link in the description and schedule a free half-hour consultation with me. I would love to help coach you through that. I'm not selling supplements. I'm not trying to get rich off this. I'm just trying to help as many people as possible, whether that's with me or we just get you on the right track. Um, Eric, you have your daughter, Lauren, the Iron Butterfly. She's got a fight coming up pretty soon. When is that?
It's September 8th. It's here in San
September
Diego
8th.
at the Hard Rock Hotel.
Perfect.
It's with Subversive. It's a combat jiu-jitsu match. So it's like an organized.
Perfect.
I like to refer to it as like an organized street fight. So
Okay, good.
it's
So we'll go ahead and put the link to your Instagram there so that way you can, if anybody who wants to get involved with that can get a hold of you and see more details about that. I do gotta take off. So thank you so much. Remember, everyone, don't do drugs, don't do vegetables. And we'll see Eric again here on the show where I'll make sure to get more time with you because I love the conversation. You're a great guy, you're a great dad, you got a great message, you're a veteran, and I love the fact that you're doing carnivore, you're getting your daughter on carnivore and keeping her to be a badass. So thank you so much, Eric, and I'll see you
Thanks
on
for
the
having
next
me.
one. Absolutely. Have a good one.